Welcome to the Sixcast, a podcast where we discuss real-world strategies, tips, and stories that provide helpful insights for your digital transformation experience.
Welcome to another episode of Sixcast, where we talk about business, technology, socioeconomics, and personal growth. This is an episode that I've been looking forward to for a long time. Today, I have one and only Ashley Konson, an award-winning Adjunct Professor of Marketing and a world-renowned brand expert. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be with you, Varuna. Once my student, now a very successful business guy in the agency world. It's wonderful to see what has transpired with you over the years.
Thank you very much. Ashley had a profound impact on my academic journey while I was at Schulich doing my MBA several years ago, and always there to support me during my entrepreneurial journey. Ashley is an Adjunct Professor of Marketing and the Associate Director of Master of Marketing Program at Schulich. He served as the Associate Director of Kellogg-Schulich Executive MBA in 2023. He has worked in senior and executive level marketing positions in the US, Canada, and South Africa with Nestle, Walt Disney Company, IMAX, and Renfrew. He's the author and instructor for the Kellogg-Schulich EMBA Designing Brand Experience Program. He's a 3-time winner and 15-time top 10 winner of the prestigious Seymour Schulich Graduate Level Teaching Excellence Award. And most of all, he's one of the most loved instructors at Schulich. I'm truly honored to have you on my show. Ashley, welcome again.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Varuna. That was a very generous introduction, but thank you anyway.
To start off with, Ashley, we have a lot to talk about, lots of academic, theoretical, and practical marketing and brand material content that we want to talk about. I want to start off with, why did you come to Canada, and how has your transition from South Africa to Canada shaped your professional evolution? I'd love to hear about your professional and personal journey, Ashley.
Well, we landed in Canada as immigrants. We actually had landed immigrants visas when we landed on Friday, the 13th of October, 1989. So I'm aging myself a little bit because we've just celebrated 35 years in Canada. And just an interesting anecdote, when we arrived, we stepped out of Pearson Airport in Toronto at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. It was 20 degrees Celsius, and we're going, why is everyone telling us that Canada is such can be very cold in the winter? Anyway, on Monday, we had job interviews set up, and it was -2 and snowing buckets, and we had summer weight clothing. So we had a very quick awakening, maybe a rude awakening as to how quickly the weather can change in Canada. Our reason for coming is a bit of a story. I'll keep it brief. Earlier in my life, earlier, I was born in a country called Rhodesia, which today is Zimbabwe. And we had a civil war. It's called the Rhodesian Bush War. I was conscripted into the army at the start of 1978. I started my service. The war ended early 1980. And I had served had volunteered for officers training, had passed the selection, had passed the course, and served as a second lieutenant in various units, including an infantry unit. By the time I was finished my service, I really had a profoundly dim view of how awful humanity can be. The terribleness of some of the things that I saw were very damaging. And, have stayed with me through much of my life and are an important part of my story in terms of how I've tried to live my life following that period. Anyway, I went to university in South Africa, very excited to be there, and had gone to university to become a lawyer. But during my first year, I started to question whether, in fact, I would stay in South Africa. Nelson Mandela was still in prison. The racial strife was really quite bad at that time. And whilst it was clear Nelson Mandela had to be released from prison, a new government had to be formed, majority rule had to come to South Africa, given some of the challenges north of South Africa and other African countries, there were some concerns about what might transpire after independence. Also, I found myself in a situation where if I'd stayed in South Africa, I might have been called up to now serve in the South African Army, and I wanted no more of that.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to my wife, and we started to think about where we might. Well, I hadn't yet met her, but I'd made up my mind at that stage that I was probably not going to stay in South Africa, but I wasn't certain. And during my first year, I took a marketing course, which was an elective, given that I'd gone to university to do a BCom LLB to take law as a profession. And I found myself falling in love with it. And I still remember the definition used in Kotler's second edition. Marketing is a consumer orientation with a profit motivation. And I fell in love with that. I thought, wow, that's business. And it certainly set my course, because I had a discussion with my father shortly afterwards, decided I'd take a degree that was with a concentration in marketing, and that I'd go into the marketing profession. And of course, marketing is an international language. After I met my then girlfriend, who became my wife in 1985, we stayed in South Africa till 1987. Things had continued to get very bad. And being a little bit concerned about, being forced to take South African citizenship, maybe serve in the South African Army, I spoke to my wife about immigrating. She was open to the idea. We only looked at two countries. We looked at New Zealand and we looked at Canada. We believed that the values that represented those countries were closely aligned with ours. We only applied to come to Canada. And there was, without our knowing, a shortage of marketing managers in Canada.
Mm.
So we found ourselves moving very fast through the immigration process. And here we are today. So that's the background story. Probably a little bit long in the telling, but all, I think, factually correct as memory serves.
Right. I want to hear a bit about your professional journey in terms of holding senior positions at Nestle. We heard about that during your classes, as well Walt Disney, IMAX as well later on at Hall Renfrew in Toronto, most likely, I think. Tell me a bit about that and how the marketing changes from.
Yeah, when I left university, I was lucky. I had been recruited to the Nestle company. The Nestle company in South Africa, didn't start anyone in a brand management or marketing role at that time. You had to go through sales. So I spent 6 months carrying a bag, serving small and very large retailers. And the reason that Nestle did that is they wanted, believe it or not, for an African country that had a very highly concentrated trade. So the pathway to your consumers in terms of purchase, because there was no internet then, was through the distributive trade, through the retailer and the wholesalers. And before you got promoted to marketing, they wanted you to have a good understanding of how that trade actually worked. I joined in a junior marketing capacity. After 6 months, I was offered an opportunity. And fortunately for me, it was seen to be a high profile, a high potential employee, and was very quickly sent on a brand manager's course in Riverain, Switzerland. A wonderful opportunity where I intermingled with about 35 people just like me, but from 19 different countries, from Japan through to Sweden, Norway, France, all over the world. It was a wonderful experience. I got to travel, visit some other Nestle companies in Europe thereafter. And when I came back, I found myself as brand manager of Cross & Blackwell, which was the biggest brand, one of the biggest brands in the South African brand portfolio. I was in that position when we immigrated. When we came to Canada, as good fortune would have it, the job that I was offered was as a senior brand manager. So I got a promotion for immigrating. I actually had to again interview with Nestle. Nestle had a dim view of young executives leaving South Africa, and tried to retain employees by making it somewhat difficult for them to immigrate. given the deteriorating situation. And so they were happy to offer a reference, but I had to reapply. Anyway, things were, I had a fantastic experience at Nestle. I held 2 different sales roles while I was there, one in account management, one setting up the new category management job at between sales and marketing that, of course, exists in all companies today at Nestle in Canada. I eventually became a director of marketing.
Yeah.
And it was in that job, in that role, having worked across a bunch of food-related portfolios, traveling to the Far East on business, working with Nestle in the United States on various innovative new products. I found myself being approached by an executive recruiter and being told that there was a job opportunity at the Walt Disney Company in Canada to head up marketing for Buena Vista Home Entertainment. Would I like to interview? I had often told recruiters I was not interested in leaving Nestle. Who would want to be interested then in what was one of the world's leading food companies, leading marketing companies? But, the words Walt Disney kind of sang a certain tune in my ear, and I quickly found myself interviewing in Los Angeles, in Burbank, California. I had 10 interviews over a weekend, and at the end of that interview process, I was standing outside the corporate building, the edifice with Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs engraved in it, looking down at my offer letter going, how did someone who was born in a colonial country called Rhodesia, who, was until recently had held a Zimbabwe passport, but was now a Canadian. How was I employed by the Walt Disney Company? It was, in my family, we call this a magic carpet ride, something where it's almost beyond imagination. You were there, and then suddenly you're here, and then, it's a magic carpet ride.
Almost like a dream.
It was a dream, yes, like a dream. Anyway, shortly afterwards, I was engaged with the company. My job was to build a marketing team in Canada. One of the business issues facing the Walt Disney Company was that our penetration of the Canadian market in terms of certain products was way behind the United States. And typically we worked on about a 1-to-8, 1-to-9 ratio, but we were behind that. And the point of building a marketing team was to bring more focus to the organization, to the selling of those products in the Canadian market. It was a wonderful period, about 1 week in every 5. I spent a week in Burbank with the Walt Disney folks. The reason was it was the only way to build rapport, to build trust, to be in the know in terms of the release schedule from the studio that was going to impact our business. And I would always take down members of my marketing team so that they could work with their colleagues in the US and, again, build rapport and build trust and help them build their sense of the Walt Disney Company. Anyway, a number of years later, I realized that my boss was going nowhere in Canada. My wife had asked me to, if I would be prepared to make a career in Canada. She wanted our children to have roots. By then, we had 2 young girls. It was a tough decision, to be honest, because my natural next step would have been a position with the Walt Disney Company in the United States. But shortly after having this discussion, I was approached by a recruiter, an executive recruiter for IMAX. Found myself interviewing for that job because of my challenges in terms of, upward mobility with Disney in Canada. And it was a very interesting interview process. They were looking for somebody who had both packaged goods and entertainment experience, so that person would bring a more disciplined approach to IMAX, but at the same time understand entertainment. And of course, my job was marketing for the overall affiliate network, and also for the 7 owned and operated theaters. I actually worked on the ground in the United States, opening IMAX owned and operated theaters in Miami, in Sacramento, in Providence, Rhode Island. It was in Providence, Rhode Island that we worked on a new retail identity for the IMAX theater with agencies in the United States. And it's that which informs a lot of my teaching today when I teach students on the importance of physical evidence and designing brand experiences within a bricks and mortar envelope, and of course outside, in more virtual envelopes. The job there was fascinating. As I say, I had many different experiences, but there was an unforeseen circumstance which I won't go into in too much depth. But let's just say that something happened in the company that led to the stock price declining very, very rapidly, very, very quickly. It was a medium-term impact. After that, the stock price started to climb again. But at that stage, cash flow became an issue. Marketing initiatives were put on hold. And I found myself thinking it was time to get back on the job market, not knowing what might happen to my role or to funding for marketing initiatives at IMAX in the short to medium term. And I found myself interviewing for jobs at the Bay, Zealot, and Holt Renfrew. All three were looking for chief marketing officers or VP of marketings or whatever the title was in those days. And things just moved more quickly with Holt Renfrew. And so I found myself, again, 10 interviews with Holt Renfrew, been offered the job as head of marketing at Holt Renfrew, and found it to be a fascinating journey. Some of my learnings at these different places, Nestle was my finishing school. I really learned how to think through everything from discerning opportunity in markets to building strategy, to executing on strategy. A lot of frameworks for doing that, a very disciplined approach, the importance of understanding consumers, of market research. When I went off to IMAX, to Disney, my marketing job was different. I was really in charge of marketing communications in the Canadian market. We received the products. We were given the products. Here are the products. You have to find a way to build their profile through marketing communications and working with retailers, et cetera, to ensure they sell through the distributive trade. When I went to IMAX, not only did I learn, did I continue to learn in some of those areas, because my job was, again, marketing communications, except as it applied to the owned and operated theaters, where I was actually working on the ground, marketing those actively. I got to understand location-based experiences to a much higher level. And when I went to Holt Renfrew, they were looking for somebody who understood brand management and entertainment, because the idea was retail was all about creating entertaining experiences around the brand. And what I learned there, again, because I was in charge of marketing communications, there was a head of operations, the stores. There were heads of the merchant areas, menswear and ladieswear, et cetera. What I learned there was that it's very valuable for an organization in terms of creating organizational focus and alignment if you can get the senior executives to agree to what the brand is all about. So that they focus and align their initiatives, their strategic imperatives, along with yours, towards building the meaning of the brand and garnering sales in a way that is has some consistency to it. Again, a very powerful lesson about the brand as a means of creating organizational focus and alignment. And in fact, I teach that in one of my classes. I think this coming semester, it's lecture 9. I'll be teaching four different sections of brand management, 2 for Masters Marketing, 2 for the MBAs, same course, but that will be lecture 9 of the semester.
Thank you very much for that detailed background on your professional experience. I want to switch the topics a little bit to talk about teaching. Teaching is such a rewarding experience. I used to teach math and physics back in the days, and my students still keep in touch with me. They've done well. Such a rewarding. There's more to the financial gain to see a student succeeds. And in your situation, Ashley, you are really liked by the students. Students go on the wait list. I personally went on the wait list to get into your course in 2016, I think. And you won multiple teaching awards. And what distinguishes you and what values drive your teaching approach?
It's a very good question. You may recall I said that my military experience had some the consequences of my military experience have paid out in good and bad ways throughout my life. I definitely I suffered some serious traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress that stayed with me for years. And so that is something I've had to deal with. Some of the negatives, let's say, of the military experience. But there were many, many, many positives. One of which is there's, one way to get just to know yourself honestly is with great honesty is when you're under fire, when you're leading people in action, and when you have to really consider afterwards how you acted instinctively, what you felt you did well, what you felt you didn't do well, and how you took that learning forward into the next inevitable firefight. So there were many good things that I took from that throughout my executive life. One day at Holt Renfrew, I decided that it was time for me to leave the corporate world, not just Holt Renfrew. And part of that was I thoroughly enjoyed the journey. I'd enjoyed the different experiences I'd had. But one of my takeaways was from this journey from packaged goods through entertainment to location-based entertainment to luxury consumer goods retailing or luxury apparel and shoes, was that the craft that I practiced could be practiced in any arena. The skills that I'd learned at Nestle could be used in any arena. But the important lesson moving through those different companies was you need to understand the context in which you're competing. If you understand the context, then the rules can be applied in incredibly similar ways. So I had decided that I wanted to get into management advising. Why? That would allow me to finally be my own boss. And I wasn't going to join a large consulting firm. I wanted to hang up my personal shingle. And I determined that it would be fantastic to take this knowledge and to work within many different industries. I've achieved that. Over the years, I've worked in over 20 different industries overall, or subsectors, from government through to technology, through to education, and literally education for the University of Iowa in the United States, where I did quite a large project, through to gaming, where I did work for the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, literally running marketing for the 2 casinos in Niagara Falls, Fallsview and Niagara Falls Casino. I've worked in many different fields. And again, as I say, those lessons that the frameworks that I had could be used in every context. You just need to understand the context really held true. But one of the other lessons that I learned from my military experience, which, as I look back, had shaped my approach in executive, coaching, seeing other people on my team grow was very important to me. I would always say that I had more of a democratic way of leading than a dictatorial view of leading. I knew that the buck stopped with me, but I was interested in the views, opinions, hearing what team members had to say. And I'd actually learned that from my sergeant major in my platoon, who probably did more than anybody else, even more than my training, to ensure I didn't make stupid decisions the first 3 months that I was actually in the field. So I realized that coaching was something that came to me quite naturally. And between the coaching and the decision to work in different fields, open my own advisory business, I realized that it would be very useful for me to be teaching at a well-known, a prestigious university, not just teaching so that I could teach, but teaching so that I could learn. It would provide me with ongoing intellectual capital that I could feed into my advisory business. I could bring my skills and my corporate experiences to the classroom. And I just thought it would be a good fit. And to be honest, it was the very best decision I made in my career. So that's how I came to teaching. In terms of some of my successes, shortly after making that decision, I actually decided that it was time for me to articulate my personal brand so that I could hold myself to account every day, not just on some perhaps clouded or overly optimistic view of how I had behaved in each meeting with a client or in the classroom, but to actually write it down in the same way that you'd write down a brand strategy for a brand. And I defined what I called my purpose, kind of a leadership credo. And I defined a set of values that would drive my behavior always. And I look back on those every year. And I ask myself, given what I've done in this last year, do these still hold true? I share them with students in probably my most popular class, which is my personal branding class, lecture 11 every semester. I call the class aptly, I think, Your Brand is Your Business. And I ask them to let me know if they haven't hung true during the semester. And fortunately, maybe they've been particularly kind. I tend to get a lot of positive feedback.
I was just about to talk about your famous saying, your brand is your business. This is a good opportunity for us to segue into talk a little bit about branding. What's your definition of brand? And why do you consider brand management is a strategy rather than a marketing function? I wanted to know, is it true for personal branding? I think you just said it is true for service-based industry or large CPG. Please tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a wide-ranging question, but I will try to be a little bit incisive. What I recognize from defining my personal brand is that you can define it, but it's executing on it that is critical. So defining it is about recognizing the foundations of your brand. Now you need a strategy to bring it to life in the marketplace, and you need to execute on it. You need to make sure that whatever you are doing every day, or let me say it differently, that you're doing things every day and saying things every day that are aligned with your strategy. In that way, it's the same as corporate branding. Corporate branding typically starts with, however, discerning an opportunity in the market, then creating your brand foundations and your strategy around exploiting that opportunity, and then putting in a plan to execute what you do every day and what you say about the brand every day, that strategy. It is in those ways that there is a high degree of congruence between the two concepts. So let me just start with personal branding quickly. I believe that there are two types of personal brands that can be built today if you are thoughtful and recognize the power of the concept. The one is what I would call small f, fame brand. The other is which I would call large F, large fame brand. So large fame and small fame. I think you have to build one or the other, to be honest. If you don't, you can easily become irrelevant. So large fame brands are brands which typically accrue to people that build incredible businesses. Think about Steve Jobs, or people who get are acclaimed consultants, educators, get on speaking circuits, write books. They can build large fame in the sense that they are known by many people. That's the whole point. You've got to reach many people, otherwise you don't have a large fame brand, because fame means you have to reach people around the entire planet. In other words, you are known in multiple countries. Small F fame is different. Here your goal is to be well known within a certain community, at least in Canada or the United States, or perhaps in North America, which is maybe medium fame, I don't know. And that requires focus. So I know that you are working hard on building your, what I would call small F fame. My small F fame came to me, I believe, because I worked very hard on taking worthwhile projects with clients in an advisory role, and then by determining that I wasn't just going to teach, but that I wanted to be highly regarded as an educator. And I believe my values would help me do that. So I would live my values in every interaction at the university with other faculty, staff, and especially in the classroom. And I think that has made a substantial difference to me. My values, be a catalyst for better, which is actually my second value, because my first value is lifelong learning. I don't teach today 20 years after I started teaching what I taught 20 years ago, what I taught even 5 years ago. If I was still doing that, how valuable would I be for students? My second value is catalyst for better, which is, I believe knowledge is valuable when shared, not when kept to yourself.
That is so true.
The point of being an educator, how do you make the world a better place? My third value is humanity, and I think that is attractive to my students. That comes definitely from my upbringing, what I experienced, how I'm trying to make the world a better place through treating others, regardless of skin color, race, religion, gender preferences, with the respect they deserve as a member of humanity. And then there is this idea of love what you do. If you don't at least like what you do, I mean, who loves what they do every day? Sometimes even I get out of bed and I go, I'd rather get on my bicycle. It's a summer day and go for a cycle. But if you don't really like what you do every day, you're never going to be very good at it.
Right.
So that's the personal branding side. Would you like me to continue with the business branding side?
Please, yes. Yes, thank you.
I think I've lost touch with the question a little bit, but I think you wanted me just to talk about...
I want to talk about your brand is your business, and what's your definition of brand?
So your brand is your business. Okay, so going back to personal branding, just as one last point here.
Yeah.
There are two meanings inherent in it. The first is your brand is you or your organization. And if you started the organization, the values of that organization should be yours.
Yeah.
So it is your brand. And if you're not paying attention to your brand, you'll never build the business behind it. See, today I get to teach all the brand management courses at the Schulich School of Business. Just recently, we were teaching 8 of them in a year. My brand is my business by being successful in doing what I've been doing, by building small F fame. I was given the entire portfolio of graduate level brand management courses to teach as recognition. The teaching awards you spoke about. If we speak about businesses specifically, I was asked a question recently. I'm doing some work for the startup community, Jewish Startup Network, the Chai Tech startup community, as a part of the Schulich School of Business marketing faculty. I run some training programs for them on brand management. And I was asked recently by a member of that community in a training course, why do I need a brand? If you ask me that question, I would say, why did you need a name, Varuna? In other words, we need brands because it's how people recognize us. And so there is unfortunately no generally accepted accounting principles behind marketing. We use words interchangeably. We have different meanings for them. The definition that I use for what is a brand is a set of associations linked to your products or services through your brand name and other distinctive brand assets that provide a compelling promise of value. So if we think about a business brand name, Varuna, the name of your agency, or Ashley Konson, what we want to do is to build in the minds of prospective customers, buyers, potential buyers of our brand, a set of associations, a mental schema in their minds, linking what we do, our products and services, to our brands in a way that helps them to recognize compelling value from us. So that is an idea that exists across both personal branding and especially business branding.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I talk about building in my classes. I talk about building your brand and your business. This idea of building some amorphous brand that has no consequence for the business makes no sense. Recently, I took a founder and a self-termed CEO. She is a CEO of a company, to task on LinkedIn. She has a very sales-driven background, and she posted on LinkedIn a big visual which said, "A brand without sales is bullshit." I was like, what? So I commented, I think my words, if memory serves, were, "Surely you jest. This feels like clickbait." I don't know any marketing professional that would argue with you on that. But here's another just as obvious thought. A business without a brand is not going to sell very much of anything.
Right.
Your brand is your business.
That goes well into my next question. The marketing landscape, the business landscape, economy is really competitive now. Economy is changing, and some claim that brand doesn't matter. And could you elaborate a little bit more into the last point that you just ended with? Why brand is more critical today in the digital AI-infused world than ever before?
It's another very good question. I'm going to step back here for a moment. COVID happens. I'm on vacation for 5 days with my wife during reading week in Florida, the good friend. Coming back late Sunday evening. On Friday midday, I see that there is an email from the Schulich School of Business on my iPhone. I read it, am aghast, because from Monday, all classes have been moved to this thing called Zoom. Never used Zoom. I also hadn't completely finished my lecture for my Monday 11:30 class. We got back home, I think, at 9:30 that night. I quickly finished my lecture. Now Schulich had tried to set up us very well with information on Zoom, but it took me till about 4 o'clock in the morning before I actually felt satisfied that I could use Zoom effectively enough to teach my first class. So my class starts. Instead of the promised 45 students, my class is full. I think I actually had 47. With that class, I can only get 25 on my screen, not realizing that I have old technology on my MacBook Pro. So it doesn't allow for 45 students. Secondly, of course, being new to the whole Zoom world, unlike today where my laptop, I'm speaking to you from my latest version of the MacBook Pro. It's on a stand, so my camera is level with my face. My MacBook was on my desk, so my camera was looking up my notes, which couldn't have been very pleasant for students. I quickly made the decision immediately after the class to order a big screen from Apple. So the next class that I was teaching 2 days later, I'd be teaching using a big screen. I ordered a Mac Mini. So I had the technology to have all 45 students on my big screen. Very excited when it arrived. It arrived about an hour and a half before my next class. Set it up quickly and went, oh no, it's come without a camera.
Yeah.
See, if I'd ordered an iMac, it would have come with a camera, but the extra screens from Apple don't come. And I'm not a techie, so I didn't even think about it. I just ordered the thing. Anyway, now it's even worse because, as you can imagine, I'm trying to use the big screen to see all 45 students. I'm getting echoing. I have to turn the sound off on one of my devices. But of course, my MacBook Pro is still sitting on my desk. So it's even worse because students are looking at my nose as I look at the big screen. The background for that story is really to answer your question. immediately after that lecture, I literally shut down the lecture. I went into search mode, determined to find a webcam, which I think is what it was called.
Yep.
No, I'm just saying because I wasn't a techie. So I think I'm looking for a webcam was my conscious thought at the time.
Right.
It's interesting. I thought about this afterwards. I only did 2 searches. Amazon, Logitech. Best Buy, Logitech.
All 3 are brands.
Many different versions of Logitech, but in my mind, somehow, I'm not a techie, Logitech had planted the mental schema associating their brand with the category sometime prior, and it literally drove my search because it was the only brand that I knew. And so therefore, unconsciously, I must have thought it was a well-known brand or a good brand, or because it was familiar to me. Now, just think about AI. Think about the walled gardens of Amazon and Best Buy and every other retailer. If as a manufacturer today, you don't ensure that through some of your marketing communications effort, potential buyers of your product don't start the search with your brand name, you are at the mercy and imperiled by what the walled gardens and AI will do to you.
Very true.
Now, there is a bunch of further academic evidence that I can talk about, if you like, that I later found supports some of this thinking. But it was a natural instinct. I know I'm a sample of one, but I think it does explain what, as marketers, we should be ensuring that we instigate as much as we can today. Brand searches start online with our brand name. Phew. Now, there's an idea for you.
Right. Around the same time, Ashley, one of my friends is one of the brand leaders or experts at Sri Lankan Airlines. During COVID, all the airlines have shut down their operations. They were doing heavy campaigns. And I asked her, nobody's traveling, no hotels are open, international borders are closed down. Why are you promoting Sri Lankan Airlines right now? And she said, it's not for today. This is for brand recall. When the borders are open, I want people to flock into our airlines.
Yep. It's an excellent point you make. There was actually a lot written on this, especially by the Institute of Practitioning Advertisers that I was researching and following closely some of their very important work done by Les Bennett and Peter Field, and also WARC, W-A-R-C. There were many articles published on it about the importance of sustaining the mental schema that potential buyers have of your brand and your brand name within that, so that when they started to get back into the buying process, a recall of your brand came to mind very readily. And there was a lot written about that. Too many brands were still strongly engaged in performance marketing. Let's call it sales activation. And yet consumers weren't buying, and there were stockouts on the shelves. And the issue wasn't. The issue was literally too little demand. It wasn't that there was a lot of demand that you should then be spending a lot of money on sales activation, performance marketing, so that you could capture it.
Mm-hmm.
So what your friend did was very smart.
So we want to talk about the ROI play in brand marketing. Where does it fall short as a metric? And you talked about if someone is not searching for the products with the association of your brand, you are at the mercy of an algorithm or mercy of another advertisement. How does this relate to?
Okay, I'm going to step back a little bit. There are 2 schools of marketing thought today. I'm going to call one generally the Kotler school. It's not really fair, but certainly he was a key proponent of it. Marketing is about STP, segmentation, targeting, positioning. Certainly at the heart of that thinking for many years was this idea of through your diagnosis of the market discern opportunity, you try to find consumers or buyers whose needs were unmet or not met very well. And if you believed your brand could meet those needs or meet them better than a competitor in the marketplace, because you were differentiated in some way, you would enter the market, target those buyers, those consumers, those buyers with a differentiated offering. There is another school of thought, which is the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute of Marketing Science. And they first wrote a book on it in 2010. Actually, there had been work going on since the 1970s by Andrew Ehrenberg and others. That was really the nexus of the start of that institute. And the book that they wrote in 2010 was really in response to work that they were doing with sponsors, large marketing companies, where the heads of marketing said, could you write a book? Because I want my CEO, my COO to read the book so they have a basic understanding. So when I walk in to talk to them about theory and how it can be applied practically, they have an understanding of it. That was the reason for the book. Anyway, I actually use a version of that book today as my course text, How Brands Grow. It's a blue cover. It's the second edition. It's called the revised edition. It came out in 2021. What that theory, because both the theories of marketing, helps us to think about is the importance of penetration, acquiring customers in markets rather than focusing on building loyalty. And they've shown that loyalty actually goes with penetration, a law called Double Jeopardy. And it is within their theory that in order to grow penetration, you should focus on building two market-based assets, one called mental availability and one called physical availability. The whole point of those two is that mental availability is that the brand comes readily to mind in buying situations. And that in the physical availability means that it's easy to see and find, easy to find and to see in buying situations. So you put those two together, and there are a number of pillars on what each is built that are truly important. I'll touch on one now with mental availability. It's a concept called category entry points. So buying brands is contextual. Buying categories is contextual. Typically, when you might buy a Coca-Cola, might be a hot day on the beach or a hot day at you're walking around and you want something nice and cold and fizzy and tasty. So you buy a Coca-Cola. But you also would like Coca-Cola to come to mind at the morning coffee moment, a contextual moment, on a very, very hot day in Alabama. Mm. Even in Toronto, when we're having one of our hot and humid days. Why? It has caffeine in it. It's quite capable of providing the same quick pick-me-up as coffee in the morning. So thinking about Coke as an option to buy or as an option to use is contextual. And so, yes, most of the time you might be competing against other colas or other soft drinks or other beverages, but sometimes you even compete against hot beverages. That's why when we think about the importance of, and I'm going to get to your question on ROI in a moment, think about building our brands. And when I connect it for you to that example that I used on Logitech earlier, we want our brands to come to mind easily in buying situations. So therefore, we must build what we used to call awareness. Awareness is a part of mental availability, but mental availability is more than awareness, because awareness is just a link to the category, whereas mental availability also is building contextual-based schemas that might be cued so the brand might be purchased in certain contextual occasions. So mental availability includes brand awareness, but it's more than brand awareness. Now we go to ROI. Well, it would seem to me that you need to build two types of marketing communications. One, which is intended to build those mental schema. Let's call that the longer term job of marketing communications. The shorter term job of marketing communications is where you want to capture demand that exists today in the marketplace. And it's very important, of course. So for your brand, you want to build mental schema in the minds of potential prospects who might come into the market in the near term or medium term. But you also want to capture demand that exists in the market today. It's the only way to grow your brand. The challenge with ROI, now getting to ROI is an efficiency measure. It's not an effectiveness measure. You can't measure the longer term effects of your brand building or building these mental schema using ROI, or the impact that they may one day have on your marketing or your ability to capture demand. It is, however, a very good measure for measuring the effects of your performance marketing or sales activation efforts today. Sadly, too many companies use ROI as a measure of all of their marketing efforts, and it's clearly poorly suited to that task. And so it focuses the team always on efficiency rather than on effectiveness and scale of effects. So I'm going to introduce to you now two other thoughts around that. Work done by Les Bennett and Peter Field on behalf of the Institute of Practicing Advertisers in the UK. It was leading work at the time. A heuristic that came out of that work, the 60-40 rule, the work that they did was basically to mine the advertising awards for effectiveness that is run by the IPA every year. It's one of the largest awards in the world. But the awards are given for effectiveness, for results achieved, not just for creativity. Creativity is just one of the elements that will help drive your effectiveness. And whilst it's not a perfect body of research, they mined the database to try to understand, let's call it correlations rather than causative factors, that led to award winners doing well. One of them, and this was in 2013, so the digital age was well underway, was that companies who did well spent approximately 60% of their budgets on brand building those mental schema I was talking about, and 40% on sales activation, performance marketing, capturing demand that existed in the market. And they had this famous chart that shows what happens to your performance marketing over time, your sales activation efforts, if you engage in brand building. After about the 6-month mark, you start to see your performance marketing achieving greater scale. Right. Because more buyers are coming into the market already with mental schema like Ashley Konson. So this gives us challenges with attribution, right?
That's right.
What really, can Ashley Konson's behavior be attributed to when he starts a search with the brand name? Is that really Google search or search terms, or no? It should really be attributed to brand marketing efforts.
That is correct.
That
yes.
preceded his starting to search.
Right.
That's one example. I'll give you another more recent discovery, and I'll call it that. John Dawes from the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute introduced some thinking around something that is called the 95-5 rule. It's really a heuristic. And it was around marketing in the B2B space especially. It can be applied to any industry. Basically, you have to understand the inter-purchase period for products or services in your category. For B2B, the average is around 5 years, based on contracts, when purchasing teams might go out to look into the market again for a new offering. And it's very simple to understand. If the inter-purchase period is 5 years, then you can say approximately on an annual basis, 20% of buyers will be in the market. which means on a quarterly basis, only 5% of buyers are in the market. So if you think about the 60-40 rule, and if you think about the 95-5, it's a heuristic. It just makes common sense. If you are blowing your brains out in terms of your whole budget on performance marketing, yes, some of that might build mental schemas, but the nature of communication needs to be somewhat different to do that. Generally, performance marketing, sales activation is much more about features rather than benefits. It's about the hard sell.
Yep.
People who are in the market today don't pay attention or very much attention to that kind of communication. So your communication needs to be more emotional, more interesting, something that may hold their attention just for a few moments. Because remember, what your job is, it's to begin to build that mental schema. So when they come into the market, yes, that's where your performance marketing and your sales activation and the actual features matters, because now they might go through that search. So going back to the 95-5 rule, if you are spending your entire budget on performance marketing, sales activation, good for you. You're hitting the 5% of buyers that are in market every quarter. And you're certainly not building mental schema in the minds of the 95% who aren't. Now, just think about the obvious manifestations of that strategy. It's well known that many purchasing teams, when they come to market with RFPs, that a number of the prospects for those RFPs are brands that are already known to the buying team. Mental availability. So this is something to be carefully considered by folks who are still caught up in the performance marketing. Sales activation needs to consume our budget because we only measure marketing by ROI. There's one last thought that I want to add. I'm not diminishing the importance of that part of your marketing effort.
Right.
What I am saying that is if you are putting all your eggs in one basket, you are destroying the future value of your business. There is a lot that has been written about sales activation, performance marketing, especially in the form of keywords, search, both paid and organic. That's the same as physical availability. In the Ehrenberg-Bass world, we should think about that as building physical availability. Why? It's just making the brand easy to see and to buy. It's like a storefront. It's just that it's a digital storefront.
Mm-hmm.
So if they enter the market, or if they are about to enter the market and they already have a mental schema of your brand, and they see any Google activity, any advertising or a search terms that surface very quickly where your name is included, that might be what influences them to go and look deeper at your brand, even if maybe yours is just one of, say, 2 or 3 that might be potentially unconsciously part of their mental scheme. Right. So an always-on philosophy is a good idea with a part of your sales activation activities.
Right. So in other terms, for businesses that are renewing their marketing effort or go into market with a new product or service, you have to understand that just going into paid performance customer acquisition marketing is going to be only short-term. There could be some short-term gains, but the performance metrics also will go up, or efficiency metrics will go up if there is a solid ground on organic visibility of the product or the service.
Look, there are 2 issues with, let's call it the startup community, which I'm going to use as the basis for. I mean, if Nestle introduces a new product, or Procter & Gamble or Unilever, or Logitech, many other companies that have real scale to them, it's a different proposition. But let's take some small founder of a business. If they are entering a category in which there are already buyers, some of the work that Ehrenberg-Bass has done, I spoke about Double Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Double Jeopardy simply says that given your market share, your penetration, and buying incidents is predictable through a mathematical formula called the derelict model, which is shown to work in static markets, which was the model is for static markets. But we've seen it work in dynamic markets many, many times. So it seems that it's highly applicable. And one of the things that demonstrates is that they've demonstrated Ehrenberg-Bass through research for which no boundary conditions have been found yet, is that bigger brands in those markets have more customers, and those customers are slightly more loyal. It makes sense. I mean, the reason that I entered that day to buy a webcam with Logitech because it's probably one of the largest players in the marketplace. So the brand came more easily to mind because it probably does more marketing than any other brand. Another law is something called duplication of purchase, which is that brands share customers in line with their penetration of markets. It's not exactly in line, but smaller brands share more customers with bigger brands. And then there's another law called the law of natural monopoly, which says big brands have a virtual monopoly on small buyers of brands, or new buyers of brands. Think about what happened to me again with Logitech. The reason I've shared that with you is when you're a founder and you're coming into a market where, let's say there is already a sizable market. We call these repertoire markets in many cases. Repertoire markets means that buyers of brands may, on occasion, buy more than one brand. Not on an occasion, but they may buy more than one brand over occasions. Most markets are repertoire brand markets, even many B2B brand markets. There's another terminology that Ehrenberg-Bass uses called subscription markets. Subscription markets are not what we think in terms of our day-to-day lives. Streaming is a subscription market in our day-to-day lives. Subscription markets based on the Ehrenberg-Bass language is a market where buyers tend to only have one brand that they buy over a longer period of time. So instead of being buyers of multiple brands, they're buyers of only one brand. And there are many examples. Think about a company that buys a CRM system. They're going to use that till they decide not to use that. Now, the question of whether they continue to use the same one or another one comes into play. Your dentist. You don't choose to have one dentist this time and another dentist next time. Women with hairdressers, even me, I have to admit, I've had the same barber for 35 years. I think he does a fairly reasonable job. So there are many markets in which we tend not to have a repertoire of brands, but many that we do. So for a founder coming into the market, which exists already, the earliest buyers of your brand, especially if it's a repertoire market, are likely to be the buyers of bigger brands, heavy users of the category. So I should say heavy users of the category who also are buyers of bigger brands. Why are they more likely to have more than one brand in their repertoire? They're also more likely to attend to marketing efforts and potentially give other brands a try. Initially, light category users are less likely to be potential buyers of your small brand. Why? The only brands they know are big brands. They're very light users. They're not paying attention to communication very often in the marketplace. If they don't currently have a need, they're not going to pay attention to your sales activation needs, your sales activation efforts. So remember, if I spoke about the 60-40 rule,
yes,
that Les Bennett and Peter Field revealed through their research on behalf of the IPA. What that would suggest that 60-40, it's not a firm, hard rule. It's roughly 60, roughly 40. That when you first enter a market, it might be that you're spending 80% on, it should be 20-80 rather than 60-40. It might even be 15-85. Why? You're really trying to make a whole bunch of noise so that heavy category users might notice that you're now in the market and give you a try. It's unlikely you'll become a part of their repertoire, but you need to get sales straight away.
Yeah.
That's what's so important. over the next short period, you have to move more of your marketing into brand building. So steadily over time, if in fact you start with 85, with 1585, you need to move steadily towards 50-50 or 60-40 over a period of time, so that you begin to build mental schema and so that potential buyers of the brand come into the market. Now, of course, you only want to do that if you have high levels of physical distribution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you're not easy to see and to find, then people are not going to buy you. So this also differs, in fact, if you're a founder of a brand that you only enter with an online offering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you only enter with an online offering, it's recommended by Les Bennett and Peter Field that over time you should spend as much as 90% of your spend on brand building versus 10% on activation. Why? Because you want people to start their searches with your brand name in memory, because it's a much greater challenge than if you've got physical distribution and people are seeing your brand all over the place in supermarkets and drugstores, etc., etc., etc. But again, generally the same rules would apply for when you initially enter the market. Now, it's a whole different ball game if in fact your innovation is new to the world. You're a tech startup creating something that's very new. What you might have to do is to ask yourself, this innovation is, what problem is it solving that exists currently today? And who are the buyers that's using that current situation, that this provides a far improved solution, likely at a lower price. And you would use that as the base to start your thinking about, how to create a balanced budget between both objectives.
Before I go into the last couple of questions, I just wanted to tap on this particular Ehrenberg-Bass empirical science of branding. They talk about the Double Jeopardy Law, where you need growth for, it suggests rather, growth requires penetration. How does it work for ultra luxury brands? Are they referring to penetration into a certain market category?
I hear the question. I think so. Let me give it my best shot. So the Ehrenberg-Bass theory of marketing is that acquisition is the pathway to growth. It doesn't mean that loyalty is not important. Some people believe that's what Ehrenberg-Bass claim, but it's not true. What they have shown, though, is that loyalty does, the bigger brands have slightly more loyalty than smaller brands. They don't say that you shouldn't think about how to retain customers. I mean, that would just be nonsense. In fact, they've done a lot of writing in that area. What they do say, though, is that too often we spend too much money on loyalty initiatives, when really we should be sustaining the buying of our brands by potential customers because we deliver what we promise to deliver. So we need to understand what the qualifying dimensions are of the category that we are competing in. What are the basic dimensions that are expected every day by buyers of that category, of that product market? And if we are not up to snuff in delivering those, it doesn't matter how many loyalty programs you put in place. But if we are up to snuff, if we are doing a really great job, if we do realize also on top of those qualifying dimensions, which are expected by every buyer in a category, also what we call determining dimensions, which are those over and above those qualifying dimensions expected by different segments we might be serving in a category, then we shouldn't think too much about also creating loyalty programs, because every cent we spend on that is money that we're not spending on acquiring new customers. I recently spoke to a student at the Schulich School of Business who I had a question that he asked if I'd spend a little bit of time. He was working on a little bit of consulting and for a business, and he asked me if he was going to recommend a loyalty program for them. He hadn't taken my class, and I spoke a little bit about qualifying dimensions, determining dimensions, the nature of the context that the brand was competing in, whether other players had loyalty programs, they didn't. And then, try to understand really what the true business challenge was. One of the questions I asked her was a location-based business. What is your penetration of households within a specific geographic area of your location-based business? Surely that's the place to start. Anyway, I during that discussion, I mentioned the fact that I recently wasn't well as I started to recover from my illness. I started to do a lot of walking, and I walked. I live in the Young and Davisville area, but I started to walk past Young and Eglinton. I'd gone to a coffee shop which I liked. Over the years, I'd occasionally stopped in there. Now they'd started a loyalty program. So as I walked in to buy a cup of coffee, sit there, catch my breath a little bit before I walked home, they asked me if I'd like to join their loyalty program. So I said, sure. I'm sometimes back in the area. I don't go there specifically because of their loyalty program. Why? Every damn coffee shop has a loyalty program. But now every time I'm there, they discount my coffee. Every time. So does Second Cup. So does Starbucks. So does... You understand my point? Sometimes you have a loyalty program because other players have a loyalty program. My advice is spend as little as you can if you're forced into that. How many people only carry one airline card? How many people only carry one a hotel card? Don't blow your brains out, because every cent you spend on that, you're not spending on acquiring new customers. If you're a luxury hotel, you better deliver the qualifying dimensions to anybody that stays there of a truly luxurious ambience, superlative amenities, and highly personalized services. If you don't have that, no loyalty program is going to fix your problem. So that's the point of many of these laws from Ehrenberg-Bass tend to show us that penetration is the pathway to growth. Duplication of purchase shows that for brands in markets or that enter markets that exist already, the pathway to growth is by acquiring buyers of brands that are bigger than you, because that's where the buyers are. By the way, even if you think about a new innovation in the market, think about Uber. When it came into the marketplace, who were its potential customers? The customers of other big taxi services. So duplication of purchase holds in so many different contexts. Yeah. But you need to understand that law, and that very quickly tells you where your future customers are going to come from.
Right. With that, I want to talk about last couple of questions. Is the traditional marketing funnel outdated? What's your take on spending for customers not
actually
in the market?
Funny, I'm building my lectures for my next semester. I'm redoing them all because I was ill for a period and was out of the classroom for a couple of semesters. So I just thought I'm going back to the classroom with a whole bunch of new information that I've been reading, but I don't have in my lectures. I literally am rebuilding every single lecture, and I'm trying to make them a little bit prettier. And the reason for that is not just so they're pretty, but part of your job as an educator is not just what you teach, it's how you teach, how you make the information easily absorbed by your audience so that they can understand it and consume it in a way that helps their understanding and their comprehension so they can more quickly apply it. So yesterday I tried to draw a funnel that showed the 95-5 rule in action. So let me take a typical atypical marketing funnel. Awareness, interest, desire, conversion, retention, some form of thing like that. Like, let's say there's 5 stages. When we see a funnel like that, typically in a marketing textbook, every stage has, it's an inverted funnel, right? So the top is the awareness stage. But it shows each, let's call it the trumpet part, the external part of a trumpet. It shows each stage as being roughly similar. So it magnifies the importance of performance marketing, sales activation for the middle of the funnel and the lower part of the funnel. In terms of the overall, I mean, there's no 60-40 in terms of that visual, is there? The 95-5 rule, if you think about it, would make that even worse, because it would say of a typical funnel, 95% should be, buyers that are not currently in the market that you should think about awareness building activities. Only 5% of your funnel would actually show that. So the question of whether the funnel is really valid given the 60-40 rule, and given, especially in the way that too many digital agencies working with clients, or too many clients are thinking about marketing because they don't have this knowledge, is simply wrong-headed. Another way to think about buyers based on the 95-5 rule is customers are either out of market or in market. But that doesn't change the tactics that you've used through the funnel. It's just that many of those only apply to the 5% that are in market. Once they enter the market, you want all of those activities to take them through that part of the funnel that will help them choose you. But now you need to think about how much are you spending on that 5% versus on creating awareness on the 95% before they enter the funnel. So where I ended up yesterday, I wished I had the visual here, but I don't have it, is I actually did create a funnel.
Right.
And what I did is I couldn't make it exactly to scale because my PowerPoint skills aren't that good. And I'm not a graphic designer. But I show the traditional funnel of awareness, interest, etc., about the bottom 10% of the funnel. And then I have an opening to that part of the funnel that comes from the 95% of customers that are not in the market. What I'm trying to show with that funnel is that entering your funnel are currently customers in market that are more likely to know your brand. And depending on the size of your brand and how much brand building you've been doing, that will determine the size of that aperture of how many are entering. Of that 5% that are in the market every quarter, how many of those might potentially enter with your brand name in mind already? So now you can move them through the funnel. Anyway, yes, I think the funnel is in question right now. I think the way it's conceived is hurting more than it's helping. Maybe there's just 2 sides to the funnel, out of market, in market. And once somebody's in market, tactics that you've typically used are the tactics you should continue to use. Certainly you should have things like search that are always on, because you never know when somebody's going to enter the market. So you want to make it easy for them to see and to buy your brand, and that's physical availability. So digital availability as part of physical availability is critical.
Thank you. This has been really insightful, Ashley. Before I wrap up, I wanted to talk about your future. What does the future hold for Ashley Konson?
Well, it's a question that I don't really ponder on right now, but I know it's something I'm going to have to ponder on shortly. I'm going to turn 65 in January. And yet I'm teaching 4 courses this coming semester after having, sadly had this illness this year. I'm so excited to be back in the classroom. One of the things that sustained me through this awful malady was the thought that if I can get better, I will be back in the classroom. I will continue to learn by seeking new knowledge, by engaging with my students and learning from them. Certainly, MBAs have worked in many different market contexts. So I have EMBAs. There's lots of very rich discussions that one can have, that one can consider how different theories might be applied. I'm excited by that. I mean, why would I go through hours and countless hours and hours and hours of rebuilding my lectures if I wasn't truly excited about this prospect? So I'm hoping I'm in really good shape again, given that my malady stays away. I'm back in the gym 6 days a week. I've lost a whole bunch of weight. And I'm hoping that both my physical and mental health will be good for at least another 3 years. Ask me the question again close to my 68th birthday. I might have another answer for you. What I will tell you, though, is I know this for certainty. If I wake up one day and I go, I'm not just tired today, but I think it just cannot find in me the fire, the passion for trying to garner more knowledge, or to find a way to take the knowledge that I've just garnered and put it into a easily digestible lecture or deliverable to a client, I will make up my mind immediately that it's time for me to return, because then I will have served my purpose, which I've always thought about is bringing leading evidence-based thinking and the best practices of brand leaders from around the globe to my clients and students. And it's exactly, I can tell you, the way that I've approached what I've shared with you here today. If this is helpful for you, for you as a past student and alumni of my class, then guess what? That idea of defining my brand, defining my values, it continues to still focus what I do and what I say every day. Organizational focus and integration for this brand, which is my business.
Thank you, Ashley. Your vision and passion to learn and share that knowledge with other students or teaching that is truly noble. There's something I truly believe in as well myself. Knowledge shines when it is shared. Truly believe in that. And you have said it so right that is one of your quotes that you live by. And thank you again, Ashley, for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. I hope this discussion provides our listeners with a comprehensive understanding of branding and how these principles can be applied to both business and personal growth. Once again, a big thank you to Ash Konson for joining me. And Ashley, it has been a pleasure having you on the show.
You are very welcome. And to be honest, having your invitation, you were a really good student. You really, leaned in to the learning. You contributed greatly to see what has transpired in your career. I'm proud to still be a part of your network, even as an aging prof. So I was truly delighted to be here.
Thank you, Ashley.
Have a good day.
Good day now.
Welcome to the Sixth Cast, a podcast where we discuss real-world strategies, tips, and stories that provide helpful insights for your digital transformation experience.